Can you believe it's been over a month since GenCon? And because I've been so busy, I haven't even gotten a chance to talk about some of the games that I played there. But the nice part about the delay is I've had a little bit of time to reflect about my favorites, so I was able to condense some of the best into a 4-course tasting flight for your gaming pleasure.
You had my curiosity, but now you have my attention.
So if you want to know 4 new games from GenCon that'll pair really well for your next game night, then might I suggest? Hi, I'm Alex from Might I Suggest a Game, a channel devoted to helping you find your perfect board game. Today, like I mentioned earlier, we're going to talk about some of the games that I played at GenCon that I think would pair really well together for your next game night. Now, before we get started, I wanted to give a shout out to the guys at Board Game Barrage who came up with this idea in the first place. I've tweaked the idea a little bit, but it's based off of one of the episodes of their awesome podcast, so I had to make sure to give credit where credit was due. If you haven't listened to Board Game Barrage, it's my favorite board gaming podcast, and I would highly recommend it to anyone who's a board game fan. I'll drop a link to their podcast down below in the description, and while you're checking that out, why not hit subscribe and that little bell button so you can get notified when I post new content. And if you've got new ideas for videos that you want to see from me, drop them below in the comments. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Anyways, let's get back to this 4-course tasting flight, and when I say tasting flight, I'm really talking about a 4-course meal. You've got your appetizer, which will get you in the mood for what's coming next. You've got your salad course, which has got a lot of flavor but isn't going to fill you up. Then you've got your main course, which you'll really want to spend some time on to savor the experience. And finally, you have the dessert, something sweet to end the night on a high note. So, will one of these 4 games be the perfect game for you? Let's find out, shall we? Everybody knows that a good appetizer is something that's light, something that's shareable, and something that gets you in the mood for what's to come. You know, like a calamari or a basket of fries. One thing I would not add into this category are crab rangoons, because they're not really shareable. I will be eating all of those, thank you very much. But I'm not here to talk about crab rangoons, I'm here to talk about Kites. Kites is a new real-time cooperative game for 2 to 6 players from Floodgate Games. It says on the box that the play time is 10 minutes, and this is one of the few games that I actually believe it. In Kites, all the players at the table will be working together to keep those kites up in the air. The kites' flight time are represented by these little sand timers, all with different amounts of sand in them, which makes it tricky to track. Play will go around the table with each person playing a kite card and flipping over the respective timers, trying to make sure that none of them go to 0. The game is over when either all of the kite cards have been played or one of the timers reaches 0. So you really got to communicate with the rest of the people at the table to make sure there's always sand flowing.
I just try to go with the flow, you know?
Good, go with the flow.
Yeah.
This game is fast and chaotic, but it's also super fun, and I think it would be the perfect game to get the juices flowing for your next game night. Plus, if you played this one before or you want the gameplay to be a little bit more tough, there's a couple challenge cards that you can add into the deck that'll add some complications every round. So if you're looking for the perfect appetizer for your game night that's quick and easy and cooperative, but will definitely get your blood pumping and get everyone to get their jacket off and stay for the rest of game night, then might I suggest Kites. Next up is the salad course, which you want to have a lot of really good flavors, but you don't want to fill people up before they get to the main course. So for this tasting flight, it's looking like it's going to be a Greek salad. We're talking about Akropolis. Akropolis is a new tile drafting and city building game for 2 to 4 players from Hachette Board Games. In the game, you'll be drafting these triple hex tiles and placing them in your city to try to complete different scoring conditions. Each of these hex tiles has different types of buildings on them, like temples or barracks or markets, each of which has a different scoring condition at the end of the game. Now the trick here is that you could have as many of these colored spaces as you want, but if you have no plazas of the same color, then you won't score anything for those. So you have to really make sure that you lock down the plaza of the color that you're looking for, or else you'll find yourself in dire straits by the end of the game.
Well, this is the end.
No, it's not, Squidward.
It's not?
One of the really cool things about this game is that you don't just build out, you can build up too. You can add layers on top of your city to gather the precious stone resource which will help you draft better tiles, and to increase your scoring at the end of the game. The higher up your buildings are, the more points they'll score, but the more buildings you'll cover up in the process. So you have to be smart about where you place your tiles. Then at the end of the game you'll score each of your different colored zones, and whoever has the most points wins. Akropolis is one of the games at GenCon that really surprised me. I hadn't really heard much about it before I got there, but when I sat down to play it, yet I was equally surprised by how light it was and how deep it was. The game really zips along at a nice pace. I'd say it plays about 15 minutes per player, which I feel like is rare for a tile laying game. And because you have a shared market and a lot of different scoring conditions, it felt like all the decisions you had to make were really important, even though the decision making process was fairly streamlined. I really enjoyed this game. It reminded me of a less mean version of an older game called Tuluva, and I think this game would be a perfect filler for your next game night to get your brain going before you get to the main course. So if you're looking for a surprisingly strategic tile laying game that doesn't overstay its welcome but still gives you that great sense of accomplishment at the end when you make the best city, then might I suggest Akropolis. Alright, we made it to the main course, and there's a lot of heftier games that I could have suggested here. You know, I could have done something Mediterranean like Mosaic, or something Italian maybe like Hoplomachus, or maybe even something experimental like Twilight Inscription. But I figured because we're having 3 other courses and you've only got so much room, I wanted to go with something a little bit more medium weight. So tonight we're having seafood. It's Ahoy. Ahoy is an area majority game with asymmetrical factions for 2 to 4 players from later games. Now you may or may not know, but later games is pretty much famous for their asymmetrical games like Vast, Oath, and of course Root. And I think fans of Root are really gonna like Ahoy because it felt like a good gateway into the idea of asymmetrical factions that would eventually get these players into Root. In Ahoy, players will either play as the sharks or the mollusks, and if there's more than 2 players, the other players will play as smugglers. The sharks or the bluefin squadron like to strong arm their opponents. They've got a lot of firepower in their cannons, and they can use a bombard action to destroy all the units on a single island. This definitely comes in handy as you're fighting for area control on the different squares of the board. The Mollusk Union is a much more defensive clan, but they have abilities that'll let them populate all across the board, and by spreading out, they're much more safe, even though that makes it a little bit harder to win those area control points. Now, the smugglers are off playing their own game of pick up and deliver, where they'll gain stuff and have to take it to different islands in order to score points. Obviously, each of these different factions have special powers, but what makes it a little bit easier than some of the other asymmetrical games from this publisher is that the factions share the general idea of what their actions are going to be, they just have different levels of capability. For example, all of the factions can sail, the smugglers can just do it a little bit better. Throughout the game, you'll be exploring new tiles of the board, but all in all, the map stays pretty small.
The map! I gotta see it, I gotta look at it, see it, and glom onto it.
Which means that you can't really help but run into your opponents. Luckily, the punishment for losing combat isn't too bad, but it still might derail your plans a little bit, so be careful. Anyways, I thought Ahoy was a great medium weight game. The action economy in it is really tight, so you have to make sure that every single turn counts. And even though you had to make tough decisions every turn, I still feel like we were able to finish this one out at about 30 minutes per player, even on our first try. And because everybody has different ways to affect the scoring of the points at the end of the round, the scores all ended up being really close. Oh, and of course I can't be done talking about this one without mentioning the awesome art by Kyle Farron that has become the trademark of later games. Anyways, Ahoy really took me by surprise because asymmetrical games aren't always my jam, but I thought this one was easy to pick up and great for people new to this genre, and especially for people that you want to play Root with eventually. So if you want to take control of the high seas and get into this medium weight game with asymmetrical factions that's got some pretty simple mechanics but a lot of strategic depth, then might I suggest Ahoy. Ah, we finally made it to the dessert course. Some people say this is their favorite course, my wife included. But you have to remember, you've already had 3 courses before this one.
So what? Who cares?
We're looking for something light, something sweet, and something that's gonna make everybody go home happy. So tonight's dessert may be matcha or maybe mint. Either way, it's Green Team Wins. Green Team Wins is a fast-paced party game for 3 to 12 players from 25th Century Games. In Green Team Wins, all you have to do is follow the title. You gotta be on the green team because the green team wins. Every round, someone will flip over a card that has a question on it. That question could be a fill-in-the-blank question, it could be a this or that question, or it could be a multiple choice question. Now, your goal is to always be in the majority. If you pick the same answer as the majority of the people at the table, then congratulations, you've officially been promoted to the green team. If you're not in the majority, however, you'll stay on the orange team and you'll have to claw your way onto the green team by getting the next one right. If you get on the green team and you stay on the green team, every consecutive time you answer in the majority, you'll get an extra bonus point. But as soon as your answer isn't in the majority, you'll drop back down to the orange team and you'll have to get the next one right to get back to the green team. This game is super simple and really fast paced, but it leads to a ton of laughs and mostly a lot of people at the table trying to justify their answers.
Hold on, wait a minute, let me explain.
I always love those rounds where I'm super confident that this answer is going to be in the majority and then I am the only person that answered that. Turns out I guess I'm kind of a weirdo. Either way, even though I suck at this game, I still really enjoyed it. And I think this is a great game to finish off your game night that doesn't require a lot of mental capacity, but still leaves players laughing and smiling, and it'll end your game night on a high note. So if you're looking for the next big party game to finish off your game night, and you think you have what it takes to be on the green team and stay on the green team, then might I suggest, green team wins. Thanks so much for sticking around for tonight's 4-course tasting flight a la GenCon. I hope that some of these new games strike your fancy and you can bring them out next time and be the hero of your game night. And if you have any more suggestions or you've got your own 4-course tasting flight, drop it below in the comments. I always love hearing from my subscribers, so I can't wait to see what you all come up with. Anyways, thanks so much for everyone who's supported me so far. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so I can keep growing this channel and keep helping you find your perfect board game. Once again, this has been a Might I Suggest a Game production, and I'm Alex, your board game sommelier, signing off.